Hey kiddos, welcome back. Today we're talking about 1.4b, okay? So today we are going to be talking about perimeter and area. So, area is the number of square units that are in the interior of a figure. So if we have a quadrilateral, if we want to find the area, we want to find everything inside the shape. And when we don't know if it's inches, feet, miles, kilometers, we just use the term units squared. Okay? The perimeter is the number of linear units it takes to travel around a closed figure. So again, if I have a quadrilateral, it's the units that it would take to travel all the way around it, okay? And since they're linear units, we can just say units, okay? So today we have two special quadrilaterals that we're gonna find the perimeter and the area of. We are going to start with squares, okay? So a square is a very special quadrilateral that has 4 congruent sides. Remember, congruent means the same length, and 4 congruent angles, okay? We're gonna talk a lot about angles later. So I'm gonna draw a square, and I'm gonna add some tick marks. Remember that the tick marks mean that these sides are congruent, that they have the same length. And so squares have 4 congruent sides, okay? They also have the same angle measurement. So I'm gonna add these in the corner. They mean that the corners are 90 degrees. And like I said, we're gonna talk about angles a lot more later. So if we wanted to find the area of a square, we would want to find the inside of it, everything inside. The formula for that is taking one of the sides and squaring it. So the length of one of the sides and multiplying it by itself. If we wanted to find the perimeter, the formula is to multiply one of the sides by 4. Okay? Multiply one of the sides by 4 because we have 4 sides. The second very special quadrilateral is called a rectangle. Okay? And a rectangle is a quadrilateral that has 4 congruent angles. They do not have congruent sides like the square. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. And with rectangles, the opposite sides are congruent. So these two sides would be congruent, which means they're the same length. And then the top and bottom would also be congruent to each other. See how I did 1 tick mark for these two that are congruent and then 2 tick marks on these two? 1 tick mark is not equal to 2 tick marks, okay? It's just another way to say that these two are congruent and these two are congruent, but these two are not congruent, okay? So, and they have congruent angles, so I'm gonna draw these, which just means that all the angles are 90 degrees. Like I said, we'll talk about those later, okay? If we wanted to find the area of a rectangle, we would use the formula length times width, okay? Length times width. So the longer side multiplied by the shorter side. And again, with area, you have to use units squared. And if we want to find the perimeter of the rectangle, we have to use 2 times the length, so 2 times the long side, plus 2 times the width, or 2 times the short side. Okay? So 2 times long side plus 2 times the short side. Okay, so let's do our first example. Our example first asks us to graph 4 points to see if the shape that we make is a square or a rectangle. So our points are A is +2, +7, B is positive 8, positive 7. C is 2, positive 2. And D is 8, positive 2. Okay, so remember we have to start at the origin, at the center, at 0, 0. We're going to move to the right 2 because it's positive, and up 7. That's our point A. For B, we're going to move over 8 to the right and up 7. B. C, we're going to right 2, up 2. And D, we're going to right 8, up 2. Okay, we're going to connect all of these vertices. Ooh, if I could draw straight lines today, that'd be great. And it might look like a square to you, but we have to make sure that we're doing the distance formula, okay? We have to know how long are these sides. So let's find out how long is A to B, okay? So remember our distance formula is D is equal to a big old square root. I'll make A 0.1, B 0.2. It is x2, which is 8, minus x1, which is 2, squared, plus y2, which is 7, minus y1, which is 7, squared. Okay? So we can keep our D is equal to our big old square root. We have x minus 2, which is 6, squared, plus 7 minus 7 is 0, so just 0 squared. 6 squared, or 6 times 6, is 36. 0 squared, 0 times 0 is just 0, so I'm not even going to write that down. So when we plug this into the calculator, the square root of 36 is exactly 6 units. Okay, so from A to B, this is 6 units. Okay? Now let's do from A to C. I'm going to keep A as 0.1, and I'm going to move 0.2 to C. Okay, so we're going to keep our D is equal to our big old square root. We have our x2, which is 2, minus our x1, which is 2 squared, plus our y2, which is 2, minus our y1, which is 7 squared. Keep our D is equal to our big old square root. 2 minus 2 gives you 0 squared. 2 take away 7 gives you a negative 5 squared. Okay, so D is equal to 0 times 0, or 0 squared is just 0, so I'm not even going to write that. Negative 5 times negative 5, or negative 5 squared, gives you a positive 25. The square root of 25, when we plug that into the calculator, gives you exactly 5. So we know that AC is 5 units, where A to B is 6 units. Okay? Since those two are not equal, that means that this must be a rectangle. So that means this bottom one is a 6, and this side one over here is a 5. Okay, so we know that this is a rectangle. So if it asks us to classify it, all you write is it's a rectangle. Okay, now let's find the perimeter. Remember, to find the perimeter of a rectangle, we have to do 2 times the length, or the long side, plus 2 times the width, or the short side. Okay, so let's substitute in what we know. So the long side is 6, so we have 2 times 6, plus 2 times the short side, which we know is 5, so 2 times 5. Okay, 2 times 6 gives you 12, plus 2 times 5 gives you 10, 12 plus 10 gives you 22, and so the perimeter is 22 units, because we don't know if they're inches, miles, kilometers, centimeters, whatever. So we keep it at 22 units, okay? Lastly, let's find the area. Okay, let's find the area of this rectangle. Remember, to find the area of a rectangle, we have length, or the long side, times the width, the short side. So our length here is 6 times our short side is 5. 6 times 5 will give you 30. And because it's area, we have to say units squared. Okay, so the perimeter is 22 units. The area is 30 units squared. And this is a rectangle. Let's do one more of those. So, for this one, we have another 4 points. We have A at +2, +2, B at 6, +2, C at 6, -2, and D at +2, -2. So let's go ahead and graph those. Right and up for A. Right 6 units, up 2 units for B. Right 6 units and down 2 units for C. And right 2 and down 2 for D. Let's connect all of these. And this one looks like a square too, but remember that last one turned out to be a rectangle, so we have to do the math. I'm gonna make A our 0.1 and B our 0.2. I'm gonna do the top and one of the sides. That's the quickest way to see, is it a square or is it a rectangle? So we're gonna bring up our friend, the distance formula. We have our x2, which is 6, minus our x1, which is 2, squared, plus our y1, which are y2, which is 2, minus our y1, which is also 2, squared. We have to simplify, but we keep our d is equal to our big old square root. 6, take away 2, gives you 4 squared, plus 2 minus 2 gives you 0 squared. D is equal to the square root of 4 squared, or 4 times 4 is 16, plus 0 squared, or 0 times 0 is just 0, so I'm not going to write that down. When we plug this into the calculator, the square root of 16 is exactly 4 units. So from A to B, it is exactly 4 units. So now we have to check one of the sides to see if it's also 4, to check if it's a square. If it's not 4, then it's going to be a rectangle. So I'm going to check between A and D. I'm going to keep A as our 0.1 and D as our 0.2. Now we're going to go back to our trusty friend, the distance formula. We're going to have our x2, which is 2, minus our x1, which is 2 squared, plus our y2, which is -2, minus our y1, which is +2 squared. Okay? D is equal to the square root of 2 minus 2 squared gives you 0 squared, plus a -2 take away 2 is going to give you a -4 squared. D is equal to our square root of 0 squared, or 0 times 0, you're going to keep your 0, so I'm not going to write anything. -4 squared, or -4 times -4, gives you a +16. When we plug that into the calculator, the square root of 16 is exactly 4 units. So the distance between A and D is 4 units. Since AB is 4 and AD is 4, we know this is a square, and we know that the other two sides are also 4s. So this is a square. Awesome. So when it asks you to classify the shape, you get to write square because you tested it. It's going to ask for the perimeter. And remember that the perimeter of a square is 4 times one of the side lengths. So we know that all of the side lengths are 4. So 4 times the side length of 4. 4 times 4 gives you 16. Since this is perimeter, we write units singularly. Okay? Now let's find the area. The area of a square is taking one of the sides and squaring it. So we know that all of our sides are 4, so we are going to square one of the side lengths of 4. 4 times 4, or 4 squared, is going to be 16, but since we're talking about area, we have to say units squared. So this is a square, it is 16 units around, and the interior is 16 square units.